which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the May 28th, 2015 Environmental Advisory Council meeting in Radnor Township. First order of business is to review and comment on, and approve, I should say, the minutes from last month. Any changes or comments? Motion to approve? Second? All in favor? Aye. Announcements. I came straight here from what I was doing today. I didn't have a chance to do my usual perusing of some important websites, except for the PEC website. And I didn't see anything that pertained necessarily to us on Pennsylvania Environmental Council website. I just got to say, remind everybody that that is an awesome website nowadays. They really have stepped up their game. They must have gotten some good money. So check that website out. PEC. Does anybody have any announcements?
This Saturday, there was supposed to be another rain garden planting down here for the ones associated with the parking lot, and that got postponed today. Looks like it's going to be June 20th now. They just couldn't get enough plants in time. So it's just been delayed.
Okay.
I have something. This is a notice I got from Representative Greg Vitale that he is hosting a hearing of the House Democratic Policy Committee on Monday, June 1st at 10 a.m. to discuss Governor Wolf's proposed energy investment initiative, which would provide more than $120 million to incentivize renewable energy, energy conservation, and green agriculture. And it's open to the public. Anyone from the public is welcome to attend, although questions are only going to be taken from members of the committee. But in case anybody is interested in going to that, it is going to take place in the State Capitol building, and there is, let's see, and it will also be online at pahouse.com/live.
So this is an important piece of legislation from what I'm hearing, and people in the renewable energy field. Pennsylvania has never been as exciting as New Jersey or California in giving incentives to people to do green energy projects. But apparently this bill is going to take a pretty good step towards that. Has anybody else been hearing this?
Today's Inquirer had an article. I think his name is John Hanger, who's made a statement, and they're talking about reinstating. There was a solar grant program that expired in 2013. They want to reinstate that. They want to dedicate something like $50 million to just solar, whether it's incentives or actual construction grants or whatever. So that was front page, actually, of the Philadelphia Inquirer today.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing the results of this. And what was why is it's a committee, did you say, talking to the governor?
It's a hearing of the House Democratic Policy Committee that will be discussing the governor's proposed energy investment initiative.
Okay.
Just one more comment I just recalled. A major consortium of unions are involved in supporting the renewable energy projects as well. And they made a statement today as well. John Sullivan, Murphy? I should know. Oh, well. Yeah, I recommend you take a look at today's front page.
All right. Thanks, Skip. Any other announcements? Okay, next item of business are our work group reports. To start off with the Radnor Green Team, I haven't heard when our next Green Team meeting is going to be. It's been quite a while since we have one. Ever since we passed the wind power, or even before that, we've kind of gone silent a little bit. So I have nothing to report on that. Sloan and I were chatting about it. Do you want to chime in?
I think that's right, and I think we should just make an effort to get one scheduled and just make sure those priorities are still being thought about and pursued. I mean, we had the top priority, which was the green energy. That's been a big step in the right direction, but there are still some others, including the hybrids and some new priorities perhaps with the sustainable parks. So I think we should make an effort to get another green team meeting on the calendar. So.
I had one comment on this. I get to read the newspaper nowadays, which is a wonderful thing at times. And I was reading, maybe it was New York Times, but the major school bus manufacturer in the United States said that they're making lately 1 out of every 6 buses are propane powered. And I don't know if propane had ever entered into our discussion at the green team level. I know we talked about natural gas. I think the nice part about propane is that it's $1 a gallon cheaper. It's a byproduct of refining as opposed to a raw material like natural gas. And there's lots of these vehicles around. It's probably incredibly cheap to refuel compared to going somewhere to a natural gas refueling stop. May not be quite as clean. I know the BTUs are lower, but it's just something that might be worth looking into in the next go-round meeting. And I think the premium on the bus is something like 10 or 15% over a regular bus. And over the life of the bus, everything lasts longer because it's a cleaner fuel than diesel and quieter. The other big issue was it was surprisingly quiet.
Yeah, that's interesting. As you know, the stumbling block in terms of natural gas for the township has been the refueling station, the cost of that facility, and the fact that there isn't a very convenient facility for them to use, at least in their estimation at this point, combined with the extra cost of retrofitting the vehicles. But maybe some of those are addressed if it's propane. So maybe it's a lot easier to put a propane tank in. And
Well, no, the manufacturer doesn't too. I mean, it's doing it over and over.
okay, well, that's a good idea, and we should add it to our list of things we were asking them to at least.
We were looking at grants, remember, for
were.
alternative fuels, and I don't believe it just restricted itself to natural gas. I think it was
That's right.
alternative fuels.
Yeah, and
So
including
it might be propane as well,
yeah.
remember?
Certainly, hybrids were included, and natural gas was included.
That was a
but-
state Pennsylvania DEP grant?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so hopefully next month I have something better to report on the green team. Dan, I know we're finished with the grant, the Wren grant, but can you? I think we haven't discussed the end of the project since here at the.
Yeah, and Ann would be better to update us on this, but I believe there's a 2-day session maybe out in Harrisburg in June. I'm not going to be able to participate. I think she was looking for someone to possibly go with her, and I think it's just sort of a wrap-up, big networking event.
Where all the people who got Wren grants go to this
Right,
event?
and I believe attendance is sort of a requirement of it. And then there's, I think there's some sort of form that she has to fill out. I know that when we had the rain garden workshop, we put out sort of a questionnaire, what did you learn? Would you consider doing this in your own yard? Kind of a survey that was supposed to show that, people had gotten something out of it. All requirements of the grant. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm just not the best
Okay.
to give the update on how that all wraps up.
I did go to that seminar,
Yeah, I was there too, yeah.
and I signed up for a consultation. They came out to my house and checked out my my yard for rain garden.
All right.
It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They're very knowledgeable people. But we did the planting here for the township.
Yeah,
right?
that
That's-
worked great, and I'm just coming out like once a week, sometimes twice a week if it's really hot, and I just set up my sprinklers and go home for a couple hours and get other stuff done, and then come back and disconnect everything. So, probably going to have to do that most of this summer, just depends how wet it gets. I mean, if we get an inch of rain, then I don't have to come out. But it's supposed to basically needs an inch a week is the recommendation. So, but it's coming along. We got first blooms, and you know, I'm doing a little bit of weeding every time I come, but it's not anything out of control. So it's good.
I overheard some lady saying that she came out here while it was downpouring to see what the flow dynamics were in these new gardens out here.
Yeah.
She said it was, I didn't catch everything she was saying, but she said something about it functioning the way it should.
Yeah, and there's some signs here in ours that where the curb cut is that drains down into it, there's, you know, some debris that's been washed down the slope, so something's getting down there. And we haven't had a whole lot of rain, so,
Oh, I know.
you know, it must be sort of we must be catching a decent area to generate enough water to wash that stuff down, so.
And Dan, any news on the Camel Park rain garden? Is that in decent shape? to
You know, I need to get by there. I think, Josh, maybe you told me it's probably got a little bit of a weed issue right now.
Okay.
I'm going to try and check it out this weekend, and then I have the contact for the neighborhood guy that, you know, sort of led the rallying
Yeah.
over there.
Let me know if you need any help
Okay.
on that.
You know, it's actually kind of better to wait till the plants get a little bigger, because then
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to identify, like, this is
Which
the
ones
plant and
should
this
come
is the
out.
weed, because the plants that are supposed to be there look like weeds.
Right.
One of them is a Joe Pye weed.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The next work group is, I'm put on here, is our brand new Sustainable Parks work group. And I thank Sally for volunteering to be on that. And I thank Dan for volunteering to be on that soon, not necessarily.
I'm happy to be a part of it. I just don't want to be the leader of it right now. I just got too much going on
Yep.
outside of the committee.
I was talking to Sloan yesterday about the Sustainable Parks work group. And I think it'd be good to have one more person on there, so we can talk to we can talk to Ann and Matt, and I guess Steve is gone. So I think it's good timing and to start this work group. And I mentioned that that we might have a mandate to look into meadowization. I think it was a commissioner, I believe it was Don Curley, who approached me and asked about whether we had ever thought of that. So I think what I'd like to have happen is, between now and our next meeting, if we could I mean, I guess I don't want to set the agenda, because I don't necessarily want to lead this group, but I'm thinking it'd be great to have some forward motion before our next meeting. I guess I wanted to open up to you guys to see, you know, what do you think we can accomplish over the next month by, you know, emails and phones and whatnot.
Yeah, I can probably pull some information together. I mean, I think it even was in the greenhouse gas action plan. I'm pretty sure we talked about that. I mean, we certainly talked about reducing lawn mowing in the parks, which implied, you know, planting natives or meadows. I forget if the word meadow was in there or not. And then we also kind of touched on it when we did the work on the goose control issue at the Willows. I think that was our main recommendation, is just let the grass get longer, because the geese don't like that.
Here's our action plan.
All right.
By the way, Josh, I'm happy to volunteer for this as well if you need additional.
Oh, that'd be great.
Bodies, yep.
That'd be great.
Happy
Yeah,
to
thank you.
jump in.
Yeah, just to touch on that, in the greenhouse gas action plan, we did have a sustainable parks policy. That was kind of our overarching recommendation for.
Yeah, I think I wrote the first draft of it. I just don't remember what I wrote.
Yes.
It was brilliant. Believe me.
I knew that.
And I hear they read it every day and they carry it around in their trucks.
And of course, we had that presentation by the gentleman from
Peck.
Peck last year, Paul, whose last name I don't remember at the moment. And that
That's
led
right.
to a little bit of other research, I think.
That's right.
So I think the one important thing we can do is the group can just reread the policy that we wrote, and that was approved by the commissioners, right? In that policy, I know we talked about the use of glyphosate Maybe in general, maybe we just said herbicides in general. Maybe we didn't call that out. Because that's obviously a hot topic right now, because they're doing the pilot study for the organic weed control, the orange rind-based stuff. We talked about reduced mowing. We talked about meadowization, maybe in that. But anyway, it's all important stuff, and I think it'll be good to kick off the group doing that.
Yeah, apparently there's and I'm waiting for Ann to get me some more information, but I think it was John Rogers put together a plan for the township property here, and it sort of identified like 6 or 7 sort of zones of where they could do things, and like the rain garden was one of them. But I think they were talking about this slope that's sort of out here as being a meadow, just to sort of reduce runoff from that slope that then comes down into the new parking lot, and also just to eliminate the need to mow on this sort of somewhat steep slope.
So you think that's something that's available on the Radnor website?
I don't know. Ann was going to try and find it in her files. Apparently there was like a PowerPoint about it. But
that'd be good to get our hands on that, yeah. Okay, well, that's great. And we're going to remove the Wren grant, obviously, from the work group reports. So we'll just have the green team and the sustainable parks for now. But if anybody has any ideas of something that needs our effort, team effort, let me know. We'll start a new work group. So the next order of business is the community environmental education and awareness. I wanted to just mention one thing. I think as a representative of the EAC, I'm not actually sure if I was representing you or not, but I presented at a seminar that the Radnor Conservancy put on 2 nights ago in conjunction with Birdtown. It was at the library. It was from 7 to 9:30 or so, and there were 3 speakers. I was one. There was a speaker from, the seminar was called "It's Easy Being Green," and I think the subtitle was it's become much easier these days to do the environmentally friendly things. And I got the impression that this was geared towards some of the older folks that are involved in the Conservancy. At least that's what the moderator implied. So one of the speakers, the first speaker was from the Penn State Extension, and his specialty was, he's an agronomist, his specialty was field crops and the use of field crops for ethanol production, or I should say alternative fuel production, so not just ethanol. And he had a very interesting slideshow that sort of gave you the ins and outs of the market and why some corn is used to produce ethanol and some is not, and whether food production is affected. And it was interesting. I don't know yet if the Conservancy is going to make his PowerPoint presentation available online, but I'll find that out. I'm not sure they're quite as savvy as the Township in terms of posting things, but the second speaker was a representative from Mom's Organic Market. They have a location in, I believe, Bryn Mawr, and they were it was very interesting, actually interesting presentation. I thought it was going to be kind of tooting their own horn a little bit too much, but it turns out that they are very green. Those guys are remarkable. They have what's the use? It's something like they 215%. They I forget the term, but it's basically like they save 215% of the average electric bill. And what that means is not only do they consume zero, but they also produce with their solar panels, right? So anyway, they're the #1 ranked business in Pennsylvania in terms of that measurement. What it was very, very interesting.
Did they describe how they did it? Is it just the Bryn Mawr?
Well, they
or
buy
is it-
they buy all wind and solar power, and then through over the grid, and then they have solar panels on the roof that are connected to the grid that then produce when the
So
sun
it's
shines.
in the Bryn Mawr facility,
Yes.
or is
Mhm.
it like across?
No, on their roof there. Yeah.
Wow.
At least I think so. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
They recycle just about everything. So remember when we talked about, hey, where do you bring your corks and where do you bring your batteries and whatnot? They take just about everything. The only thing they don't take is hazardous wastes because they're not licensed, a licensed collector.
They even do electronics.
Yeah, they do. They collected, I want to say something like 94,000 pounds of electronics on their last collection, which I believe is multiple times what Radnor collected.
Mom's Organic Produce.
Mom's Organic Market, I think it's called.
Do you have a contact? Because I'd like to reach out to them and find out what their experience with solar panels has been. You know, in terms of what's it like, how much are they generating, how big a space do
Yeah.
they need, all the stuff that we've sort of kicked around a little bit for the township.
The contact that I'm going to give you is probably not the right person to talk to about that, but she could probably steer your question. And I don't have it unfortunately in
Yeah,
front of me,
just
but what I'm
zap
going
it
to
to me.
recommend you do is go to the Conservancy website and look up this seminar.
Okay.
Called It's Easy Being Green, and they'll have her name there. They recycle blue jeans. That's pretty neat. Okay, and then I was the third presenter, and I talked a little bit about me personally. I talked about my professional experience as an environmental consultant and as a real estate developer trying to use green technologies. But I focused mostly on the EAC and what we've been doing and what our goals are and some of the hurdles we've had. And everybody there was very interested in helping us out. When I talked about the need for a mandate, that we think that we can get things done more efficiently and we can push it all the way up through the ladder more easily when there's somebody up the top that's requesting it, right? And how do you get those people from the top requesting it? You get the community asking for it. And these guys are obviously the perfect partner in that regard. And they, again, asserted their eagerness to help. So it was good. It wasn't super well attended. There might have been 20, 25 people there, but yeah, it's not too bad.
Did they have any suggestions, any actual things they've been trying to push for at the township level, or was it more a sort of general discussion?
Yeah, I don't think they mentioned anything specifically
Okay.
about that, but anybody else have anything to add to community environmental education or awareness? All right.
Well, I just seem to be full of comments this month, but one more newspaper article. Everyone is aware that California is having this acute drought and that 80 or 90% of the water that they do use is for agriculture. Someone, and this is New York Times, so you could look this one up. Someone has figured out in some unusual way that on a statistical basis, the average American is responsible for, in some way, consuming 300 gallons of California's water every week because we eat food, in effect, whether it's almonds, avocado slices, salads, whatever. And the water doesn't go back to California unless you live in California in some way. So it's pretty amazing that that's everyone. That's, whatever 400, 500 million people we are now, averages out to 300 gallons. And some of that is washing the food, and some of that's irrigating the nuts, but some of that's cooking and processing. But it was a very detailed article. I think it was last Sunday, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the other interesting factoid I heard about that is that I think you're right. It's 80 or 90% of the water goes to agriculture, but which this surprised me. Agriculture is only 14% of California's economy. I would have thought it would have been 60 or more. So I think that's part of the part of the revolt is, you're using all this resource and you're not really producing, it's the same amount towards the economy. So.
But we don't have alternative suppliers. So, I mean, if you suddenly shut it down, there would be price spikes of, considerable amounts, I bet.
Plus, I wouldn't get my garlic. I did go to the garlic capital of the world when I was in California.
I guess the collateral comment for the EAC is that, go to your farmer's market, because now increasingly their produce is Pennsylvania or New Jersey or whatever, and it's Pennsylvania or New Jersey water and things like that. And not to mention the energy loop is much smaller because it's only coming 50 or 100 miles.
My wife had made some comment about the farmers market in Devon, it's in Wayne, I guess, and she mentioned something about it not being very local. So I'm not sure, and I don't have any facts about that, but I would be curious to know how much of their produce is local.
Well, they're what is known. I was looking at doing one of these in King of Prussia, and I couldn't put it together in a good way, but they're what is known as a winter market. So they want you to come there every week. And in January, the radishes and the tomatoes are not local. But as soon as they can substitute, there's huge economies in terms of profitability to substitute radishes from Lancaster County instead of California. And I mean, even the Whole Foods in Devon has all sorts of local lettuce and things like that. I mean, it's a good trend. And there are two different produce vendors in Devon, Wayne Farmers Market. There's also a, Margaret Kuo, takeout Chinese, but you have to appeal to a broad base of customers to be viable economically. But I think go back, and it's not
Check.
as bad as you think.
Check in the summer. Yeah.
No, check right now.
Yeah.
And they will say which things are homegrown and which things are not.
Well, why don't you keep your mic on, Skip, and tell us a little bit about what's happening at the Planning Commission.
I was on vacation for the May meeting. I can tell you that Villanova continues to bubble and simmer. There's a special meeting on Villanova on the 17th. There's an item on the 2nd that talks about lot consolidation. I haven't dug into it yet. We just got the packet yesterday, but that'll be on Monday night's agenda. And there is a strong rumor of major litigation against the project. A bunch of people are getting together and raising a war chest and all that. That would delay the project 9 months to 2 years, depending on how it all turns out. That's a $200 million project.
Do you know the basis of the potential lawsuit?
That Villanova's in breach of a 1990s agreement to build a bridge at Ithan. That was part of the approval process to build the Arts Center, down the street, and they never built it. And some would argue that the new bridge at Church Walk is a way of meeting a lapsed or a failure to do what they were supposed to do in the first place. Mm-hmm. But that's part of the basis of the lawsuit, that they didn't meet their requirements years ago. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. That won't necessarily be at the meeting on the 17th unless they, the folks that are behind it appear in the audience. And then there's a series of small subdivisions and redevelopments, but nothing that you should worry about unless you're next door.
And the biomed has been.
We gave biomed preliminary approval. I'm not sure where it stands with the commissioners. But it was the best biomed plan. That was the April meeting. It was by far the best biomed plan we had ever seen. So, and it was closer to if such a thing ever exists, a true by right development. But it still would be 470,000 square feet. And right now, they have 425 or 375, and it's only 60% occupied. So the traffic was always the biggest single issue for most people. But one of the things they proposed was to put in a major investment, a 7-figure investment in traffic controls at the lights, where they use cameras to sense traffic. So if the load going down Lancaster is 30 cars and the load at King of Prussia Road is 10, that light's going to stay on longer and relieve that pressure. And in their testimony, they said that when this type of control is used, it almost always results in a 20 to 40% improvement in traffic flows, no matter what hour of the day you pick.
Wow. That's interesting.
Thanks, Skip.
No.
I'm going to actually act as our quasi shade tree liaison this time. We haven't had a shade tree liaison since I've been part of this. I mean, they're still listed as a partner, but I had to go in front of the Shade Tree Commission for a project that I'm doing at my house, and they're really all business. They remind me a lot of like the zoning or the planning. They get projects that come in front of them, and they're checking. There's not a whole lot of discussion about how to. Sorry, there was no discussion while I was there about how to better the township and that kind of stuff. That's not really their game. This is my first one I've ever been to, so I was taken. I thought it was interesting how it was just really, hey, let's plow through these projects. Ardrossan was there, a couple of new buildings going up in Ardrossan as part of the the development that we've all heard about.
But in their defense, I would say that they are extremely knowledgeable about their subject matter.
Oh, of course, yeah. Maybe I didn't mean to imply that.
No, I know. I mean, I think their job is,
Yeah.
protecting heritage trees, and it's so, I recently went before them too, and they were very much in control of the details, and I actually came away pretty impressed by their grasp of the
Of the subject.
Subject.
Sure, yeah. I just had some kind of a crazy idea in my head about what went on in those meetings, and I was totally rewrote that when I was there. But yeah, just thought it was interesting.
Did you?
Did you request a liaison?
They beat me up a little bit, I gotta admit. They didn't like my tree protection, and so.
You'll be planting a few new ones.
Yeah. I'm not taking any trees down. I was just moving some dirt around.
And did you ask for a liaison for our?
No, I did not. No.
Didn't seem like the right.
No, it was good. There was
They
a
would-
room full of people that had drawings in their hands.
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
This
right.
is not the time. No other liaisons are here. Any old business?
I just wanted to update, as you may know, we have a new director of the library. And so I did check in with the new director, whose name is Annie Lepley, to know that we exist and that we are, aware that they're planning a big renovation and addition, and that we would like to be helpful and encourage it to be green and all that stuff. And so she let me know that they're focusing on the fundraising now, which I saw also in the April 13th Board of Commission meeting minutes, that the capital campaign for that project had started the previous week. And she confirmed their focus on fundraising now. She said the architects are working on green solutions. The architects working on the project now. I don't know if it will be the eventual architects. And she's still familiarizing herself with the building plans, but she knows that certain things are going to be part of the project, like responsive lighting and temperature controls, and that she'll keep us apprised as things go on. So that was great, and I'll stay in touch.
Thanks for reaching out.
Did you get the feeling that the green options were a function of the fundraising, or did you feel like whatever level of fundraising and whatever level of renovation, they were going to incorporate some green options into that plan?
Well, from the little, let me explain. We first had a very, very brief conversation and then an email exchange. So in the more detailed part, which was the email exchange, she did allude to architect working on it now, and she said she knows that those things I mentioned, the responsive lighting and temperature controls, are planned. But I'm sure also that the fundraising will, in some sense, determine or be a factor when they're figuring out what green measures to take. I'm just assuming that will be the case.
Do you think she would come and update us? Because I thought it was a very interesting presentation, a year ago when we got, so, do you think, I mean, obviously if she's swamped, that's one thing, but maybe she'd appreciate an invite to a future
Yeah,
meeting.
I could certainly ask her. I think it's too early it may even be too early to mention it at this point. Maybe in a couple of months I can say, hey, would you think about doing this in the future? Because I'm assuming the fundraising itself has got to last for months. But yeah, I can absolutely write her.
Yeah, and maybe leave it to her to determine
Yeah.
when the timing's right.
Yeah.
But, it may be that, getting it on her agenda sooner is helpful in terms of just making sure that, this is part of the overall discussion.
All right.
Sounds like you're.
I can do it sooner rather than later then. Get it on her.
Call when,
Yeah.
but, at least know that we'd love to have her when she thinks there's, good stuff to talk about.
Okay.
I'll just mention, just so Sally doesn't feel like an overbearing meanie, I'm going to mention it for her. She sent around to everybody a summary, meaning like just a few things to take a look at with regard to studies on turf. And we all promised that we would look at it, and I don't think any of us did, and none of us got us back to Sally. And she's mad at us. So can we please put this one to bed next meeting? And
Don't show up next month.
or don't come. Matt's going to forward to everybody the minutes of our special meeting it was not a special meeting. It was minutes of our a regular meeting where we met with Leo Barnaby from the school district. He's going to forward that around to everybody, and you can see exactly what language we used in it. I'll try to remind everybody at the time when I send out the draft agenda for the next meeting that this is going to be wrapped up. Hopefully. Okay. Any other old business? Any new business? How about public comment? I think the microphone is on. I think.
My name is Andy Santillo. I'm from the Park and Rec Board. I'm sorry I'm late, but I just wanted to let you guys know I'm here, and I had to fill in at the last second. So if you guys have any questions I know we're rotating members each month to attend your meetings. If you had any questions for Park and Rec, I just wanted to let you know. I just didn't want to interrupt earlier, so.
Hey, nice to meet you, Andy.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys too, so.
Would you mind giving us a quick, we have, from our understanding of how it works with the Parks and Rec is that each member takes 2 or 3 parks kind of under their wing. Is that still the case?
Yeah, we call them park liaisons.
Park liaisons?
And each of us sort of are assigned those parks. And we ask that you look at, we go around each month, check around, see anything, just sort of let us know. And also so that when someone comes before the board and says, hey, I want to take a look at I have an issue about Odorriceo, instead of like all of us knowing very little about Odorriceo, one person knows an awful lot about Odorriceo. So that's one of the reasons why that was implemented about 2 years ago. If you guys are interested, I can always circulate who's assigned to which parks if you guys think that would be helpful. And again, it's to sort of provide some specialization. It doesn't preclude anybody else from if they're at Odoriccio for a sporting event, for example, saying, hey, I saw something, but just, again, it sort of makes someone, at least we know someone there is very knowledgeable about the park and the arrangements if any issues do come up with that. So that's what we're doing with there, and right now there's really no big issues. I think Luke was working with you all on some things over at Fenimore, and I know those have always been in discussion. And again, last year Luke was permanently assigned to the EAC. This year we're sort of doing a rotation just to sort of change things up a little bit, see what happens. So,
What are your 3 parks?
I have more than 3. I know I have Tennell, I have Bishop Allen Park, I have Uniker, I have, I'm blanking on it right now. I just sort of do a loop. When I go running on Saturdays, I do a loop. So those are the ones I have. But I can get that list out to you if you guys are so interested. So just so you know, and you can contact any of us, obviously. And anything else I can help you guys out with for parking?
Are there any big projects you guys are working on? Or
No, we had the big thing we were reviewing was the cell phone tower project, which I know got a little bit of publicity around here. The Board of Commissioners decided that was something they didn't want to entertain, so that's sort of been put on the side for now. We were very involved in the Willows, sort of that project. Those were sort of big initiatives in prior years, but now it's like our agendas were pretty short the last meeting, so we'll see what happens. But
there's no news on Willows, is there? I mean, I know that they had to go back for another. Didn't they go for another proposal, or is it? What's the status on that?
From my understanding, they're going with the group. It was at least in one form Jeffrey Miller, and they're going forward with him. I'm not sure if that's the same. It's the same name, but it's the same partners, I believe.
So there is a partner in place. And
yeah, and it seems like everything's moving forward. Obviously, there's work on the bridge down there, which is sort of hampering things a little bit. But it seems like things are moving forward, and I don't believe, I'd have to check with Tammy, I don't believe they're taking reservations yet, but it looks like they are going to be doing that in the relative near future.
Okay.
So that's sort of what's
great.
going on there, which is, I think it's overall it's better than what was going on in the years prior, where the township was responsible for marketing and taking reservations, and it was sort of a little-known asset here in the township and outside. Now I think a group that's a little more profit intensive will be able to sort of take the run with it. So.
I went to a Shakespeare in the park
Yeah.
at the Willows last summer and really enjoyed it. I don't know if that's going to be.
I believe they are doing
repeated.
that again in the Great American Campout. Tammy can tell you guys a little bit about that. I think it was the end of June. The township actually got an award for that. So it was I think the National Great American Campout. They had something at the Willows, and it was apparently a great success. And the township has won an award on that. But other than the only things I know coming up are capital planning. We're trying to get more resources to the parks in general. We believe they've been underfunded due to other budget priorities in recent years. So we're hoping that changes. And each of our assigned parks, last year we went around and sort of made a list of short-term and long-term projects as we see with those, and we submitted those to the township staff, and they were trying to put those into their budgetary process. So.
But you are working to obtain those park and rec fees that are now attached to development.
I know that's something the township is on as looking at as a staff. That's not something we've been looking at strictly as a board, though. So.
I mean, you should speak up for your constituency because, I'm sure if you don't grab it, so to speak, as it comes in, it may be used for something that you don't necessarily want or need, from your priority standpoint.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that's something I know that we hear about it, and that's something I will be asking about. And that was one of the things with the cell phone towers. I know it was a controversial issue, but our proposal was that any revenue be used specifically at the parks that were affected. But our recommendation. One recommendation is another recommendation, I guess. So we all know how those go sometimes. So.
I don't know if you were here for the discussion of the Sustainable Parks working group that we're trying to put together on the EAC. It's just it's an idea that we have had in our overall priority list for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
We I think are going to put a task force together of folks on this council, and I think in the past we've mentioned maybe to Luke that, we'd love to work with Parks and Rec on it. I don't know if it needs to be a formal member or if there's somebody who might be interested in working with us from Parks and Rec. I think it would be helpful. I don't know what
Yeah,
you guys think.
I'll just bring Andy up to speed
Yeah.
real quick on that.
Yeah.
We, in our greenhouse gas reduction action plan, we had talked about a reduced mowing as a potential
Yeah.
item to help our greenhouse gas emissions. And we decided to, instead of just putting a single specific recommendation like that in there, we said, why don't we broaden it and we'll call it a sustainable parks initiative. And we thought it could, we then developed a policy. I don't know, do you recall that?
I do recall that.
Yeah.
And I know there's been discussions and reports by Luke about the no-mow zones and so forth, so I do recall that, yes.
So the policy that we did, I believe it was last year, possibly the year before, but it was more broad than just mowing. It talked about the use of herbicides, talked about maybe it talked about meadowization as a
Yes.
something like that, pesticides. Anyway, so we had been approached by a commissioner late last year about meadowization as a possibility, a pilot study kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we were also approached about the geese
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And we were also approached about the use of Roundup as an issue. So we thought the time was right to maybe put together this work group. And like Sloan said, I think it'd be great to be able to work closely with Parks and Rec on that and make sure we focus our efforts where you think it's best used.
Yeah, no, I know that the meadowization came up, and I think, one of the things I think the discussion, and don't hold me to it, but I believe the discussion was generally that if you have suggestions of specific plots, that would be a good place for that pilot study. I mean, the idea of a meadowization pilot study, that sounds great in theory, but if you have a specific plot in mind, specific place where you think that would be a good sort of place to go, I think that would give us a little more direction in terms of our recommendation of it. One of the things I think you mentioned in your review of the shade tree, and I share your sentiments of how it's a very focused, and part of their focus is because they have a very defined jurisdiction. We have to do liaison similar as I'm doing here. And our Park and Rec board is, the jurisdiction's kind of subjective. So a lot of times we have people come through with ideas, but for us to be able to act on them, we need a little more detail to them. And I think if you have a proposal of specific meadowization, for example, I know Roundup has been brought to our attention, and a number of the studies that have come out recently, and the concerns about how Roundup, a lot of weeds have become more and more immune to Roundup, so that the ingredients have become more and more potent, to put it lightly. I know that's something that's come up before us and we've been discussing. So, I mean, anything that affects the parks obviously falls within our jurisdiction we'd be interested in working on. So, and I'd also be interested to hear about the turf comments that you made earlier, just because obviously that affects fields. We have the Memorial Park, which has just been turfed, what was that, in the last 3 years? And I know the turf is coming up for renewal up at Radnor High School, I think, in the next year or two. So, those things we'd obviously be interested in hearing from you all on. So, but if you have any questions, I'd be
Thanks.
happy to answer.
Andy, thanks.
No problem.
Nice
Thanks,
meeting
y'all.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Any other public comment? Alex, you sure? You could prove to the professor that you were here just by coming on TV. Okay, so there being no other public comment, we'll adjourn. Thanks.